Hi, I'm Monica Bramlett, and in this video we are going to look at place value strategies for dividing multi-digit numbers by one-digit divisors, as well as using area models as a strategy to divide. Let's start with the problem 432 divided by 6. The first thing I want to do is I want to work on getting an estimate. This is going to help me as my starting point for my multiplication. So I know that 6 times 70 is going to be 420. I know that because 6 times 7 is 42, and I'm making that 10 times larger. 420 is rather close to 432. I also know that 6 times 80 is 480. So I could say that my estimate might be somewhere around 75. So in some cases, some students may struggle with this part right here. If they do, a quick strategy to help them here would be for them to make a T-chart of multiples. And this is something that they would just want to rely on until they get the process under. After they have the process, they can move past this step as it can take time. So right here, what I'm going to do is I'm thinking about multiples of 6. So we know that 1 times 6 is 6, so 10 would be 60. We're going to double that for 120. And I usually, for this, will double up until this point, because then I've got a building block for my estimate. So for example, if I see that this is too low, but this might be too high, it gives me the idea of being able to step down a group of 10. So that's just a tip in case students need something to help scaffold their estimates at first. So I've now set up my problem using my division bracket. So the first thing I'm going to do is, this is a strategy called partial quotients. So rather than using the traditional algorithm here, you're going to see me referring to strategies based on place value. So earlier in my estimate, I saw that 6 times 70 was 420. I'm going to start there. So I'm going to take away 420. I know that that's 70 groups of 6. Sometimes I notate that right here, 70 times 6, if I need to remind myself, but that's not always a necessary step. So 432 minus 420 is going to give me 12. Now I'm down to a basic fact. I know that 2 groups of 6 is going to give me 12. And now I'm left with 0. So when I put these two together, these two are my partial quotients. When I put them together, I get a quotient of 72, which is reasonable to my estimate of 75. Let's look at this with a different problem. So I'm going to divide 285 by 5. First thing I'm going to do is get an estimate. I know that 5 times 5 is 25, but if I make this 10 times larger, I'm going to get 250, which is close to 285. I also know that 5 times 60 would be 300. So 285 could fit somewhere in the middle here, so I'm going to say my estimate is about 55. Okay. I'm going to use what I talked about in my estimate, this 50 groups of 5. So I'm going to take away 250. So that was 50 groups of 5. I subtract it. I'm left with 35. I know that that's 7 groups of 5. So 7 times 5 is 35. And I'm left with 0. I add my 2 partial quotients together for a quotient of 57. Now I'd like for you to try this strategy on your own. Press pause, then press play when you're ready to check. Alright, so I'm going to start with my estimate. So I know that 7 times 90 is going to give me 630. That's because I know 7 times 9 is 63, but I'm making it 10 times larger. This is rather close to my dividend, so I'm going to go ahead and just say my estimate's 90. Alright, so I'm going to start by using that estimate and taking away 630. That's 90 groups of 7. I'm left with 14, and I know that 7 times 2 is 14. So that leaves me with 0, and I have a quotient of 92, which is reasonable to my estimate. Next, we're going to look at how we can use an area model as a strategy to divide multi-digit numbers. Let's start with the problem 268 divided by 4. So my first step again will be to get an estimate. I know that 4 times 60 is 240. 4 times 70 is 280. So I'm going to give an estimate of about 65. Alright, so when I'm using an area model, the first thing I want to do is I want to draw a rectangle. So I have my divisor as my known dimension. So in this case, I know that my length or width is 4. Next, what I'm going to do is I know that the total 268 should be what this adds up to. So I'm going to keep that in mind. Previous to this, when I was making my estimate, I saw that 4 times 60 is 240, and I'm going to use this as a place to start. So if I have a rectangle that's 60 in length and 4 in width, I know that that's 240. Okay, well, I have 268 as my total area, and I just created my rectangle for 240, so I'm going to take that away from my total. So I'm now left with 28. I'm going to think, okay, I have 28 left. I want to subtract something from 28 to get to the final answer. So I know that 4 times 7 is 28, and 28 minus 28 is 0. So there's nothing left. I also know that I need to adjust my rectangle as that section is too large. So I'm going to come in and adjust that. So I know that my quotient is 67, which is reasonable to my estimate of 65. Okay, let's look at how we can use an area model to solve the next problem. Let's solve 207 divided by 3. So I'm going to start with an estimate. I know that 7 times 3 is 21, so 70 times 3 would be 210, which is really close to this. So I'm going to go ahead and make my estimate 70. Okay, next step is I'm going to draw my rectangle. Label my dimension that is known, which is 3. Now, the problem here is that my estimate is actually above, the product of my estimate is above the quotient here. So what I want to do is step down to the next multiple of 10, which is 60 times 3, and I get 180. So I can use that as my starting point. So 60 times 3 is 180. I have 207, which is my total I'm wanting to work towards. And I'm going to take away 180. I'm left with 27. Okay, so I know that I have 27 left. I want to take away some number here. And I know that 9 times 3 is going to give me that 27. So now I'm left with 0. So I've divided out my area. And now I know that my quotient is 69, which is reasonable to my estimate of 70. Next, I would like for you to try this problem. 324 divided by 6. Press pause and then press play when you're ready to check. So let's start off with an estimate. I know that 6 times 50 is going to be 300, which is close to my dividend here. If I went up to 6 times 60, I'm going to be at 360. I'm going to stick with an estimate of 50 in this case. So I'm going to draw out my area model, label my known dimension, which is 6. My first estimate was 50, so I know that 50 groups of 6 is going to give me an area of 300. So I starting with 324, I'm removing 300 of the area, and I'm left with 24. Okay, so I need to take away something from this 24 to see what's left, and I know that 4 times 6 is 24. 24 minus 24 is 0. I'm going to adjust my rectangle and know that my quotient is 54. So in this video, we looked at using an area model as well as strategies based on place value to divide multi-digit numbers by one-digit divisor.